everyone, and welcome. This is episode 350 of Milwaukee's Tailgate Brewers podcast, part of the MKE Tailgate Network. I'm James. Paul's out this week, but we still have Ryan, and joining us from Urban Wauwatosa.
Hey, it's J.R. Radcliffe, trending sports reporter for the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. It's been a long time since I've been on this podcast. I want to say, I feel like the last time I was sitting in Ryan's basement and we were talking about the team's decision to promote Keston Hiura. I think that's where that was. So we're talking 5 years, maybe 5 years, I think.
Yeah, I think you came downtown to my place on the east side once. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, that's a different one.
Yeah,
that's a different one. That might have been more recently. That might have been just after COVID too. So maybe it's been more recent than that.
Yeah, it was sometime around then. But yeah, we've had Kurt on since we've had you on, but you haven't been on this podcast in a very long time. Yeah.
You know, I love podcasting. I love it. I will tell anyone that wants to know that. But Kurt really loves podcasting. That man is on the Cespedes Barbiecast. He's on Foul Territory like every other week. I think he's on there as much as anybody. He is a man of the people. He loves being out there. And obviously he's on my Microbrew podcast, which you can also hear every day. It's great because we come out Monday mornings. You guys come out Monday mornings. And it's perfect. You get kind of two different viewpoints of the same stuff. We obviously don't have a chance to compare notes. So sometimes it's like, oh, I should have thought of that. We should have talked about that. You know, maybe sometimes you think that about us. Who's to say? I don't know. But exactly. We have a good time.
Yeah, I do. I always tell Spencer, I appreciate when they announced they were doing their podcast, the Brewer Fanatic podcast. Yeah, they're going complete opposite of us so that we're not getting too much congestion on the beginning of the week. So that was
it's appreciated.
Nice. Well, also it's good for them to get launched to do that. Like it's in their own best interest as well to not come out at the same time. So yep.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. I like to think that, you and Kurt actually know what you're talking about because, you get to ask the questions and we're just speculating over here. But there's plenty of speculation going on as we record this on Sunday night because, oh my God, what the hell just happened in Arizona? But we'll talk about that in a second here. Thanks, JR, for sitting in. Before we get started, as always, a reminder, you can become a patron and help support us. Patreon.com/MKE Tailgate, $2 a month. Guarantees you get your questions answered both on this podcast and on Reporting as Eligible. Make JR read all of the questions over there. $5 gets you that perk plus the additional exclusive content. That includes the Minor League Extra with Ryan and Spencer, as well as Paul's Reporting as Eligible mini pods. So even if you're not a patron, you can support us another way. Go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever else you listen to us and give us a 5-star review. While you're there, please be sure to hit that subscribe or follow button to make sure you never miss an episode. And man, JR, I know busy day for you. You got a Packers game at noon and then immediately followed by a very, very eventful Brewers game in Arizona. So I just want to start. We're coming fresh off of this. Like this ending just happened within the last 30 minutes or so. And we're still kind of looking for an explanation. But the Brewers... We're hot. We're hot. We're good. We just spent a good 10 minutes ranting before we even started this podcast. The Brewers had a chance to sweep the Diamondbacks, and then they lost it like multiple times. And it was not Pat Murphy's finest hour as manager. But, JR, do you want to walk us through what we just witnessed and help us process our emotions real time?
When I woke up on Sunday morning, gentlemen, I told myself there's nothing the Milwaukee Brewers can do to ruin what they've done this week. They had won 4 or 5 games on a West Coast road trip. The Packers are playing earlier the day. Do you think anybody cares about what the Brewers are doing? No. Let them lose 15-0 in Arizona. It's fine. Their magic number is no worse than 3. They're going to come home. They're going to clinch the NL Central at some point on this homestand, maybe as early as Tuesday or Wednesday against the Phillies. What could they possibly do that could seize the narrative and turn this week sour? And, obviously in the grand scheme of things, it probably didn't. But still, what a tremendous, tremendous loss. An all-timer orchestrated by many questionable decisions, not all of them Pat Murphy's, I should point out. No. Losing 11-10 in extras, not allowing Devin Williams to enter the game when he was warming a couple times. Seems like he wanted to monitor his workload and also Yoel Piamps' workload by the fact that they only let him face one batter, but not so much Jared Koenigs, who worked 1 inning and then started getting hit around in the bottom of the 10th to surrender a 2-run lead that was fashioned only because interim manager Jeff Bannister decided, I think we'll walk Bryce Terang, who, friends, is a really good. The best thing you could say about his hitting is he is really good defensively. To get to Jackson Chourio, who is one of the best hitters in baseball in the second half of the season, bar none. Certainly the best 20-year-old in baseball in the second half of the season. And that didn't go well. 2-run triple. And you think, oh, the Brewers are going to win this game. They are going to snatch it from the jaws of defeat. They scored 8 unanswered runs in this game at one point. They were down 5-0 and somehow battled back to lead 8-5. And then they gave that up. And then they took a 2-run lead and they gave that up. Pat Murphy is making a lot of questionable calls over the last, 6 to 8 weeks. This is certainly going to be remembered and certainly one of them. I think it's just, I think the biggest thing that you take away is that this might be retroactive. I don't know if this is true or not, but like, I don't remember thinking that hard about Craig Counsell's bullpen usage, his decisions. I always felt like I understood where he was coming from. I felt like there was a plan, and some of it is very different from how Pat Murphy approaches it, where Pat Murphy has this sort of win today philosophy, and Craig Counsell would punt on games where they were down 2 runs in the 6th and throw his lesser bullpen guys. And it all kind of made sense in the grand scheme of things. There were very seldom decisions where it's like, wow, I would have stuck with the other guy. And Pat Murphy isn't like that. I'm routinely thinking about his bullpen decisions. And today's certainly an example of that, but a lot of them have even worked out. They get the out, but it's Elvis Peguero bringing him in weird spots, having Hobie Milner pitch, having Hobie Milner on the roster at all, which is not a Pat Murphy thing, but it's confusing. I just feel like he's still feeling it out as a manager. And maybe that's, for a guy who's been around the game long enough, that's, maybe he's never going to feel it out. Like maybe this is just who he is. I don't know if that's necessarily true. I think he's still learning his personnel and learning what makes sense and learning the overall philosophy. Early in the season, he's pitching Brian Hudson more innings than he's ever pitched, to the point that they've now sent him to AAA to try and, essentially half rest up for the playoffs. Those were decisions that he was making then that he doesn't make all the time now, but it doesn't make sense to kind of half do this and try to soak in an extra inning out of Jared Koenig when Devin Williams is available and clearly ready to pitch because he was in the bullpen. So I find myself perplexed a lot by Pat Murphy. I do think he's clearly a manager of the year front runner. He clearly has a great rapport with the players. That is half the battle, maybe 3/4 of the battle. In-game stuff, man, it's not always clear to me what's going on. And I'd be worried about that. In a short series, one call like that is going to make a difference. So that would be my concern right now, is that Pat Murphy maybe doesn't quite have the best handle on who to bring in certain situations.
Yeah, and it's weird, too, because this is such a deep and talented bullpen that it feels like you should be able to just kind of make a lot of calls, and they should kind of work out because there's so many good pitchers in there. But there's been a lot of ups and downs in that, too, because like early in the season, Brian Hudson was absolute stud, lights out, to the point where, and they were using him a lot. And then right before he got sent down, he was actually struggling and his velocity was down, and Spencer and Jack have kind of cataloged that really well, that like he was in a bad way and kind of needed something. I don't know if this is a reset for the postseason or if this is just they don't think he has it at the moment and they need to see if he can get it back. I don't know. I haven't been looking at his stuff, but I want you, do you have in your head, JR, the tune to Remember When for your song on the podcast?
You mean like the Alan Jackson Remember When?
Yeah, your song that you play on the whatever that, I don't even know who that is. Is that Alan Jackson?
Oh no, I'm sorry. You mean Remember When on the podcast? I used to have daytime memory. What was it? I've changed it. I changed it a long time ago because I was honestly quite worried that maybe I was violating copyright. If we're being completely honest.
Okay. Wait, was that? So
Red Hot Memories and Ice Cold Beer by Jerry Lee Lewis.
Okay, that
Red Hot Memories, Ice Cold Beer. Right, that's the one you're thinking of.
That was and also, what do you use now in its place?
Just some like fiddle music. Honestly, guys, I don't love it. I'm probably gonna get rid of it next year. I just figure it's not worth doing it right now.
Okay. Anyways,
it's just some instrumental.
So we have to throw this in the Wayback Machine because I remember another disaster in the desert that scarred me and a lot of people for life.
Don't you dare.
Cale Willis, if you're listening, sorry in advance.
Don't you dare.
Sorry, JR. July 3rd, 2008 will live in infamy forever that was worse than this. What made me think of it was the fact that they didn't get an out, right? They didn't get the out. And that's what happened here in the 11th inning, was they just didn't even get the out. Was it the 10th inning? I can't even. It was the 10th.
10th inning.
Yeah, it was the 10th.
I was totally going to use that for Remember When this week. Legitimately, that is on my list.
Oh, was it?
Not even because of Sunday. Because Saturday, the Diamondbacks scored 8 runs and made things kind of interesting. It's already on my list. So even though I am twitching nervously because you've brought up one of my core, most negative memories.
Yes.
I was already going to talk about it. We'll talk about it. I love it.
That was, that was the game where the Brewers were up 5-0 heading into the 9th. And then in order, it was Guillermo Mota and Brian Schaus and Solomon Torres.
Solomon Torres.
None of them could get an out. So the Diamondbacks ended up winning on a walk-off, down 5-0 coming into the 9th, and they didn't even record an out. And so I was having flashbacks to that as I was getting ready to do this. So yeah, it's not great, but the big point here is ultimately, we were talking about this a little bit before we started. You're like, we're going to remember this, but not like anything that happens in the postseason is going to overshadow this. This will stick in our craw for a bit here, but they are on the verge of clinching here. They're very close to doing the business and getting the clinch. And once they do that, this sort of stuff just doesn't matter. But man, it was really something to watch them do this. And it does stand out because the bullpen has not given away. I mean, obviously it hasn't given away many leads because it's one of the best bullpens in baseball, but this one was it was relentless in how they just kept doing this. And we should remember the Arizona Diamondbacks are the leading run scoring team in MLB this year. They are like one of the best offenses, if not the best offense in baseball. So they're going to do stuff like this, I guess, but you wouldn't expect it to happen against the Brewers bullpen, and you wouldn't expect it to be quite so catastrophic as all of this was. So
I think I'd be curious to get your sense of the bigger playoff picture and how you guys feel about this. I know we're all going to say the Brewers want that bye. Every team wants that bye. They want that extra rest. They want to line up their pitchers or whatever that means, even though everybody's going to, have some small injuries at this point of the year, whether or not they get 3 days rest or not. But they want the bye. Of course they do. It's just that it just doesn't feel like a big enough prize to go all out to the finish line to chase, because yes, there's the small sample recency where teams that got the bye didn't even make it to the World Series for the National League. But also like the Milwaukee Brewers, and I know I may be overthinking this myself here, but they have one pitcher in Freddie Peralta who is their number one guy at this point. I would say that obviously even he has flaws, as we kind of have discussed. And then a lot of other guys that are the same. Like I legitimately couldn't tell. I could not line them up 2 through 4. So getting your guys all in line by the end of the year, I don't know what that gets the Brewers. I don't know if that necessarily, if you have to, because other guys have pitched, rely on Tobias Myers for game 2 or Frankie Montas for game 2. Oh, well, they're just as good as Colin Ray, or maybe Aaron Savali has to pitch. I guess he's probably a notch below them, but like they don't need that per se. So they're in a tough spot because they're going to have this thing so tied up. They're going to have a playoff spot within the next couple days. And then do they need to go all out for that bye? Because does going all out mean you're going to wind up with more tired guys for the real games that matter? I don't know. It's a tough spot to be in if you're Pat Murphy to really know how to handle it. I would argue he did it very poorly on Sunday. Like you can't go halfway. If you want, let Aaron Ashby soak all what's left of the game up, then do it. That's fine. But, It is difficult. It's a difficult road. I don't think the bye is that important. It is important, but I don't think it's that important. That's just where I'm at.
I mean, they're going to be able to set up their starters however they want. Obviously, that is not a question here. I think the main advantage this has in terms of resting is being able to put your bullpen guys on sort of a regular schedule to know when they're going to pitch and to keep them fresh and to not have to do things where you're running Devin Williams out there 4 days or, 3 days out of 4 or something like that. That's not going to happen. That isn't going to need to happen. And that isn't going to happen from here on out. You can just not worry about stuff like that. I don't know if you want to get quite to the point of like AAA or the minors where it's like, this is your pitch day and you're going to pitch regardless of what the game score is. Cause that's how things, especially in the lower minors, things work that way. I don't know if you want to get to that point, especially, but you definitely are going to have the opportunity to use your bullpen and get them ready with the ideal amount of rest and the ideal amount of work so that they're fresh, but also crisp for the postseason. So they're going to have to balance that out. And that's going to involve a lot of talking to the relievers, figuring out where they're at, what they want to do, how they think they can best get ready, that sort of thing. That would, that's going to be a big part of this, because I don't think you can. Getting that bye does matter. I mean, it does, I think, substantially increase your chances of going to the World Series, just because it's one fewer stupid series, especially
of course,
these little 2-game series. It substantially improves your chances, but I don't know how substantial it even is.
It's also just another round that the relievers don't have to pitch, right? So if we're worried about Devin Williams and Trevor McGill and Yoel Payamps pitching so much down the stretch, it's one fewer series that you have to use them. But I guess to JR's point, if you're going balls to the wall to get there, you're going to have to lean on those guys in September. So it's sort of like, which would you rather prefer? I don't know. It's tough.
Yeah, and yes, they're going to have to pitch extra games. 3 innings, like at most, because they were used in all 3 games. Like, look, I realize that's of course you want to play one less opponent to get to get into the playoffs. Of course you do. I guess my thought is a 5-game series and a 3-game series are only negligible differences in terms of random. You're going to have to win a crazy 7-5 game in an elimination game to advance to the World Series. Nobody is going to steamroll through this. Well, they might, but there'd be no predictive data, especially this year. There's no team that should steamroll their way. So I guess I think it's not that I obviously they want the bye. It's not that they don't want it. It's that how much are you willing to commit to get that? Because I just don't think it's worth the risk of messing around with stuff and letting guys go full out, like driving up their innings counts way past where they've been before, just to get something that's only a marginal upgrade. But it is an upgrade.
I think I mentioned last week, basically, I think the best way to handle this is you're going to manage like you're in and things are fine, and you're going to still try to win games. You're going to hope, especially the offense can win you games. Like that's going to be like a big focus here. You're going to hope that can happen, though. With the pitchers they're facing from the Phillies the next 3 days, the Phillies are they've lined it up so that they've got, their horses going against the Brewers here. So that will be interesting, because that could, spark a whole bunch of narratives or whatever. But the thing is, if you do get into that last weekend and the bye is there for the taking, I think at that point you would get fairly aggressive about it, right? Like, if it's right there, if you're like in a tie with the Dodgers or whatever, and you can go secure that bye, I think you would want to be somewhat aggressive. And I think that's not necessarily a bad thing, because one, if you can get it, now your bullpen's going to get the rest it wants anyway. So that's really not a big deal. And you're also just kind of getting guys ready for the elevated pressure of playing, games that matter again, after they've just had a series of games that, it kind of didn't matter that much. So ramping back up that last weekend before is something you kind of, I think, want to do, though you also want to be careful, because you really don't want anybody to get hurt when you're doing that. So that's bad.
True.
If somebody gets hurt.
Of course, you could also throw them hardcore and not get the bye, lose the game anyway, like they did on Sunday, and use almost all of your best guys and not have them at full strength for the Philadelphia series. I'm just throwing that out there as also a possibility. There's no, obviously, like they're going to try to get the bye. If it's down to the last series, they will go all out to get the bye, and let the chips fall where they may. I don't think there's a right answer, to be honest, but
I agree.
All right, before we move on, we do have a Patreon question to get to. Keith Keskinen asking about Sunday's game. Pardon my French, but is Jeff Bannister the dumbest effing bench coach in the history of baseball? So he was at the helm when, as we mentioned, he called to intentionally walk Bryce Terang to get to Jackson Chourio, who then promptly lined a 103-mile-an-hour fastball, ripped it the other way for a bases clearing triple. So, we were feeling good at that point when Keith sent that question, and then feeling very much not good about 10 minutes later, as we saw how Pat Murphy, himself a longtime bench coach, played that last inning. So I don't know, Ryan, where does that go down in terms of bad decisions? They won the game, but obviously the process was flawed.
Yeah, I don't know. Wasn't Jeff Bannister an actual manager for a while too? Didn't he manage the Rangers for
a bunch of bad teams? Yeah.
He won 95 games in 2016 with the Rangers, and he won 88 in 2015. He got fired by 2018 though.
Yeah. That is certainly a decision that somebody can make. I wouldn't support it, but that's definitely a decision. I don't know. Was Pat Murphy bunting in this game that I missed? I missed a bunt. Was he making Joey Ortiz bunt
heavens,
again?
yes.
Oh, he was making Joey Ortiz bunt
Two bunts. Two bunts in this game that were extremely objectionable.
He started extra innings with a Sal Frelick bunt that popped straight up, so that was bad. But then, there was Ortiz too, right, JR?
Yeah, Ortiz bunted into a double play earlier in this game. He loves having Joey Ortiz bunt. Not sure why, because Joey Ortiz has shown that it's an adventure. And then he wanted to start the extra innings for some reason on the road when he needed really more than one run. Decided to start with a Sal Frelick bunt. Now, Sal Frelick makes some of the weakest contact in baseball. So if you wanted to tell me that he's a better chance of reaching base with a bunt, I could buy that, I guess. But I mean, this has been talked out to death. I don't understand. Like, it's 2024. Everyone knows that your chances go down in almost every situation when you bunt a runner over, when it works successfully. And even when it does, there's a pretty good chance that a hit is what brings in the final run. I'm sure there are games that have been won because of a bunt. The vast majority of games it has either backfired or not been consequential. So I don't understand why in 2024, with all the data to prove it, we still love to go back to that well, like it's something that the current Major League Baseball players are good at. They are not. It is not their fault. Pitchers are tough. They don't do it in the minors, or at least not if they're like good hitters. So I don't get it. But some old baseball players just love that bunt. Love it, love it, love that bunt.
Yeah, it was almost doubly funny because Eric Haas very nearly went deep, like immediately after that, flew out to just in front of the warning track. So it was like he didn't need to bunt, man. And then Jackson Churia tripled. So you don't need to bunt. Stop wasting outs.
Yeah, you could argue, of course, that if he lays down the bunt, the Haas fly ball gives you the run. But one run doesn't do it in extras. They start with a runner on second. The odds of that runner scoring are elite. Play for the second run. I mean, whatever.
When you're on the road,
we could say it. It doesn't matter. They're always going to do it. They love bunts. They love it.
Yeah, and it's so. But this one won't go down because it wasn't successful. The Joey Ortiz bunting into a double play wasn't successful, so that won't actually count against his ledger in terms of it won't go down as a sack bunt. It'll go down as nothing.
No, it's a disaster bunt.
Yeah,
and they scored a run later in that inning. They got a 2-out hit, but if maybe they had gotten doubled off, they would have had an additional run, and then I don't know. They probably lose anyway. Who do I know? I have no idea, but. They don't have to go to extras, maybe. It doesn't matter what we say. They're always going to bunt. People are convinced that bunting wins baseball games, despite every ounce of data that tells you otherwise. And nothing we say is going to change that. So we just got to live with a few bunts.
I always enjoyed going home from games at the park. And this happened many times. Hearing people complaining that Craig Counsell wasn't bunting in late game situations. I must have heard it when you're riding the bus back to, I don't know, where you dug out 54 or Magoo's or whatever, riding that bus back and hearing somebody always drunk, complaining that Craig Counsell doesn't bunt enough. And sitting there just like smiling and going, oh God, I'm so glad that that's not happening anymore. And now they're definitely bunting more, but it's like they're below the league average in terms of how much they're sacrifice bunting. So like it's so weird. It's so weird. I don't know what to make of it.
Here's what I liked about Craig Counsell and why I think he's a really good manager. He just didn't have time for foolishness. If the data says this, let's do that. If he didn't want to talk to the media. I mean, he did, but he did talk to the media. He didn't want to because it was foolishness. It had nothing to do with winning ball games. So he was a little prickly sometimes, but he just didn't get caught. He didn't overthink. You knew kind of where he was coming from. He thought about championships more than individual games, and he understood what data was telling him. And so I don't think Pat Murphy is bad with data. I think you mentioned that, sometimes he's worked. He doesn't manage like a college baseball coach does. Mm-hmm. He doesn't think on just heart and gut and things like that. Like most of the time anyway. Craig Counsell, I felt like all the time I knew what he was thinking. And we're not there yet with Pat Murphy, and maybe we'll get there. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. as we mentioned, it was a good start to the road trip for Sunday. They took 2 out of 3 in San Francisco, first 2 games in Arizona as well. The offense did struggle a bit for the first 4 games of the trip. Lots of 2 and 3 run outputs there, but they managed to come away with wins before breaking out in a big way, obviously, both Saturday night and on Sunday. They scored a bunch of runs last 2 games, but really it was the pitching when the offense was kind of slumping there that really carried them for most of the trip, with the exception of a couple of bad starts from Colin Ray in San Francisco and then DL Hall on Sunday. So I guess, JR, as you look at this team, obviously they're built on pitching and defense, right? But like, how far can that get them in October when, the offense is kind of struggling to score runs?
I mean, I think that's why these last 2 games are comforting, in that the offense still has this in them, and they're going to need to come up with hits. They're not going to win with 3 runs. They're going to need 4 or 5. And that'll probably do it if your pitching and your defense is as good in the postseason as that they can be. I mean, I love, we talked about, I love the possibility that they only are going to need those starting pitchers for 4 innings and then go to hammer after hammer after hammer. Side note, if they had Jacob Mizorowski, they'd have one more hammer, but I'm going to quickly digress. I think he should be on this team. I'll quickly digress again. I think the hitting is okay. It's never going to be special. This is not a special offensive team. It's just not. They have, I wouldn't say they have glaring holes, but Rhys Hoskins is pretty bad this year, but he hits home runs, so he's got a place here. Self-Relic does not make hard contact, but he gets on base and he works counts, and he's a good defender. Bryce Turang is bad offensively, excellent defensively. Had a rough game on Sunday, oddly, but whatever. He's great. So like, every player on this team has a role, has a value, and offensively, I do think they can piece it together. And these games prove it. Sometimes they just get hot. You've got Jackson Chourio is not slowing down. He's incredible, and he's only getting better. He's 2020 as a 20-year-old. That's insane. So love what you've got there. Of course, when the bright lights of October shine, you never really know how guys are going to react to that. Maybe Rhys Hoskins figures it out in time because he's the guy who's got that experience. I don't know how much I buy into that or believe that, but I have to think, part of me still thinks he's probably getting a little bit healthier as the season goes on, and maybe it clicks in October. Adames is still good. William Contreras is still good. I think they can do enough offensively. I don't know if they will. It could be tough. It's certainly not a juggernaut offense, but again, nobody really has a juggernaut offense. So if the pitching is as acclimated as I think it will be, and the defense is still doing its thing, I think they have a really good chance to win games.
Yeah, it's going to come down to power hitting. It really is. If they hit home runs,
for sure,
I feel really good about this team getting runners on base. They have done a very good job of getting runners on base for their power hitters to hit home runs. Sort of famously, the Willy Adames 3-run home run thing, when he's not hitting grand slams like he hit on Saturday, they sort of have the ability to do that. So it's really going to come down to, are they in a run where they're hitting home runs? Because if they're hitting home runs, they can go a ways in this postseason. And that's actually not really revelatory. That is what wins in the postseason and has for quite a while now, is if you hit for power, if you're hitting home runs in the postseason, you tend to win. Like, that's it. Those things are pretty tightly correlated. So because everybody sort of has a certain level of pitching and defense kind of in the postseason, or at least most teams do. There are occasionally some bad pitching defense teams that get in there, but most of them are pretty decent. It really just comes down to like who gets hot with the bats. And yeah, somebody like Rhys Hoskins, Jake Bauers, for God's sake, these guys could get hot. We won't know until we're there. We just don't know. But it really, like, a lot of it's going to come down to obviously Chourio, Contreras, Adames, that trio of hitters. And hell yeah, I'd feel a lot better if Christian Yelich was in there too, because that's another just stellar all around bat. It's been sort of, I've been surprised how good the offense has been without Christian Yelich. Ups and downs, sure, but that's also just offense in general. But they've actually kind of held serve throughout this time period when Christian Yelich has been hurt, and he was quite clearly the best hitter on the team. So yeah, it's kind of wild that they're still doing that. But yeah, they're going to have to hit for power in the postseason. That's what's going to need to happen.
Still sign me up for Sal-Frelick being David Eckstein. I think that's the key. That's the key. Sal being Eckstein. Yeah.
He's a little frustrating as an offensive player because you look at his numbers and they're just not terrible, but you have to watch the lack of contact. It's just, I guess, like David Eckstein, I suppose. We do, by the way, now know, because we are doing this in the aftermath of this game, this Sunday game, that Yoel Payamps, it does sound like, had a little bit of forearm tightness, which is why he ended up leaving that game. So I don't know if that's how bad that is. This is all still rolling in. That makes a little bit more sense why they would only use him for a batter. It also maybe would make sense why they only used him for 2 batters a couple games ago, where it seemed like it didn't make sense to pull him as quickly as they did. So that, that's not great. He's been really, really, really good, even while dinged up, it seems. And they do have options. They have depth. Nick Mears could come off the injured list. Jacob Mizorowski is a name that I have said out loud already. I will continue to do so. So they're at least protected.
Craig Yoho.
I mean, that's
Yoho.
Craig Yoho, perhaps. Craig Yoho. I mean, that's the thing about this bullpen, is that Payamps getting hurt would stink, but it's not a dramatic downgrade to what they have. They have built so much depth with this pen, so that's encouraging. I feel like no matter what happens, their pen is going to be really tough in October. So that's that's the bright side of a maybe a dark cloud.
All right. I guess speaking of dark clouds, terrible sadness over the Brewers franchise in the last week. We lost Hank. As far as we can tell, the original Hank. So Hank died over the last week. The tributes came pouring in. All the fun memories of how he distracted us from Ryan Braun's PED suspension. He holds a big spot in Brewers history. So I only hope the Brewers do right by him and build the statue out front right next to Bud Selig, or preferably next to Ryan Braun's Walk of Honor plaque. That's the right thing to do, I think. But we do have a couple of Patreon questions about Hank. So Luke Rice Suitcase is asking, win it for Hank. As king of content, what are JR's favorite Hank moments from the past decade? JR, what do you got?
So to be completely honest, I haven't written much about Hank in my day. I have referenced him. I did an interview with Marty Wronski when the Brewers general counsel, when she was promoted a little while back. She had taken Hank home. He has been part of their lives, presumably, according to reports, for a decade or more, which indicates it is in fact the original Hank. And
that's what state media wants you to believe. But yes, carry on.
That's the narrative that it is the same Hank, and of course, I do believe it is the same Hank. I love the idea of a paw print in the cement next to Ryan Braun's Walk of Fame plaque. I mean, let's just make that happen. I don't even need the statue, because we got to have real estate still for the Jimmy Hoffa statue, for the Jackson Churio statue. I mean, we are running out of real estate here. So just a paw print is all I ask. Little remember Ryan Braun by. I love that. They got a guardian angel. I mean, since Hank left us, the Brewers have played pretty well. Sunday was tough, but since Hank left us, they've had a little bit of a guardian angel. Dogs do go to heaven, right? So yeah, guardian angel watching out for them.
Do. There's literal movies about all dogs go to heaven. So yeah. Mm-hmm. I guess, Ryan, favorite Hank memories?
My favorite Hank memory is Andy Schaff doing that interview. I think it was on WISN. And the photo that he gave them was from Facebook, and it was just him smirking with sunglasses on. That is my favorite Hank memory of all time. That was, for those that don't know, that was during the Hank is dead conspiracy days, and Andy was one of the leading proponents of said thing. And so he was called upon by, like I said, I think it was WISN, and the photo that he gave them was, I mean, so unbelievably perfect it hurt. It was just that will always stand out as my favorite thing. I think I actually did see Hank once in person when they were that first year before they decided, because I think the whole deal was, the reason Hank wasn't around was Wronski, they decided Hank didn't really like being in public. He was not really a people dog, didn't like big crowds. And so they just said, we're not doing this anymore. But early on, when Hank was over there in I think it was the lowest level over in right field, I remember going over there and seeing Hank from a distance, but Hank's receiving line was too long, and there was no way I was going to stand in line to, I don't know, pet Hank, or I don't even know if they were allowing that, if you were just just allowed to have your picture taken with Hank from a distance or something. I'm not exactly sure, but Yeah, the Andy Schaff interview is clearly number one in this whole thing.
I can't believe they forced an actual press conference to be held with the veterinary records.
Love it.
Oh,
truly an elite moment in thumbnail photo choice by Andy Schaff. Excellent work. What do you think goes through a dog's head when there's just a line of people to pet you? You know, like out the door. What does it do to your psyche as a dog when you're like, what is wrong with these people? Why do they all want to pet me? Especially if you're a dog who doesn't like big crowds. Just tremendous situation for Hank to be in.
Yeah,
he's like, I was just wandering around Arizona and now I'm in this cold place. I don't know what I did wrong. Exactly. People want to pet me, I guess.
No, I mean, no. I was talking to Amy about this week, and I'm like, she's like, oh, that's sad. And I'm like, look, the dog was a stray and was wandering around Arizona. And I don't know exactly what the lifespan of a stray dog in the greater Phoenix metro area is, but it ain't long. And so the fact that he wandered into the Brewers thing and lived another decade after that point is like, that dog is the luckiest dog who ever lived. Like, he really, he fell ass backwards into kibble, basically. Like, the whole thing was great for him. He got another 10 years out of it. And yeah, I think that dog really, really lucked out. So it's sad, but you know, we know that our pets aren't going to be around forever. We know we are usually going to outlive them. So you sort of know that going in.
I don't know, man. I've got a dog that's 17 years old, and he's still kicking and bebopping around. So,
well, I've got an 18-year-old cat that my wife is determined to have make it to 30. So, yeah.
And maybe your pets will resurrect just like Hank did.
Exactly.
Multiple times.
We'll send into heaven to the great fire hydrant in the sky.
Yeah. All right.
Did you touch on Jay Google? There you go. Sorry.
Yeah. No.
Sorry.
One more. I read the questions on this one, JR. Sorry.
You got me. I got lost for a second.
All right. Jay Google asking, why do we keep bunting? Let Ortiz swing. Also, which Hank was your favorite Hank? 1, 2, or 3? So, do we have a favorite Hank? That was another thing where it's like, obviously, you know, tongue in cheek. This is a different Hank. Look at the differences, but also the Brewers going like, well, grooming's a thing, so you know, it could be the same Hank. I don't know. I will
vouch for this slightly. My sister has a dog. What is the dog? A golden doodle? Ask my son here. He might know. It's adorable. It's small. When it gets a haircut, it is a completely different dog. Not personality wise, just look like those are two completely different dogs. And then his hair grows back and it's the first dog again. So I know that this can happen for people who don't own pets, which actually I don't, but this it's fascinating to me how different the dog can look with a haircut.
Absolutely. So, you know, it could be the same Hank, or it could be 3 Hanks, or Hank lives forever in our hearts. I'm still disappointed the Brewers didn't put the black band on the sleeves and put a patch on the uniform in San Francisco, but there's still time to make things right, Brewers.
The real Hank are the friends we made along the way.
Exactly. Retire K9, put it in the rafters next to Euchre's 50, and there you go. All right. Other Patreon questions. Let's get to those because there's a bunch. Tim Brown asking, what were the odds the Brewers could pull off carrying 3 catchers this long? It's amazing. It's worked so well and truly paid off. So, you know, it helps that Eric Haas has continued to hit. And it's also helped that William Contreras really needs a bunch of days off. But I guess, JR, this does seem to have gone on longer than I expected. How about you?
Yeah, 100%. I think they worked it pretty smartly. You know, they let Gary Sanchez be hurt as long as they possibly could. And then they brought him back. And I myself had my doubts, you know, as much as I think Eric Haas has contributed. I think it's pretty obvious to me that if they had to pick 2 of the 3, they would pick Contreras and Sanchez. But man, did he hit a bomb on Sunday again. Like when he gets into them, he really does get into them. I do think he's their best defensive catcher, and I think it's pretty nice, a pretty nice luxury to have him back there. And as long as he can hit off the bench as a pinch hitter, you know, what's the, like, there's enough guys on the roster now, 28 guys, where you don't need every spot to be an everyday contributor. I mean, Andres Monasterio barely plays. Eric Haas barely plays, and it's okay, because as long as he can come in cold and make things happen like Eric Haas can and be a reliable, you know, guy behind the plate, why not? Like, what else are you going to use that spot for? Some, you know, you're not going to, like, there aren't guys growing on trees who are 28th men who can contribute better than that. So they really lucked into this here. They've got 3 really solid options behind the plate and certainly at the plate when they're batting.
Yeah, really, the Christian Yelich injury is what opened all of this up, which is weird to say because Yelich is an outfielder and this is 3 catchers, so you wouldn't think they would be related. But really, it opened up enough playing time at DH for this to be workable that these guys are playing DH quite frequently, and it's not bad to have Gary Sanchez or William Contreras in the DH spot, especially against lefties. It makes perfect sense to do that. So that's kind of what opened it up. So circumstantially, I certainly didn't think this was going to happen. I was poo-pooing it, saying you can't really carry 3 catchers that long. It doesn't work. But the situation sort of opened up for it to happen, and they've been fortunate that it did work that way.
All right, moving on. We've got a couple of questions about Garrett Mitchell, who's been seeing plenty of playing time lately. Michael Parr first asking, this has been the longest healthy stretch of Garrett Mitchell's career, and by all measures, he's been wildly productive. However, we're not yet at a full season's worth of games in his career. Do you believe more in him yet, or are you still skeptical? Do you think he's a borderline all-star as his numbers state, or are you expecting a different level? So he did go 0 for 2 today with a walk. So he's hitting right now 255, 349, 455 this year. But, obviously that's only in 58 games played, as mentioned there in the question. So I guess, JR, let's start with you on this. Is this encouraging? Are you hopeful that he can stay healthy, or are you still kind of worried that a hamstring can flare up at any moment?
I think I'd push back maybe a little on borderline all-star. I guess maybe I'm judging it too harshly. I don't think we're talking about that exactly, but an 810 OPS, 123 OPS plus, that's good. Like, you'll take that, especially someone who can play elite center field defense. Like, the thing is, that's a little bit of a redundant skill on this team. So, but I mean, if you've got a guy who can hit 810 and play center field defense like that, then absolutely you put him on your roster and in the lineup. I am encouraged by his recent power surge. I thought we needed to see a little more of that, given the strikeouts, which are always going to be an issue with him. And he delivered a little bit, So certainly it's encouraging. Honestly, when he came back July 1st, I thought, how long do they really have him before he gets hurt again? Not to be like a pessimist or negative, but that's always been part of his story. He has never stayed healthy for this long. So you kind of figured, got to keep Perkins around, keep Frelick available to maybe play center field in case Mitchell goes out. He's not one of the top 3 hitters in the lineup or anything, but what's not to like about it right now? I don't think it gets a whole lot better than this. Just the profile suggests that this is probably about the best case scenario or close to it. Maybe you could see even a little more power. I think his base running is really weird. So maybe a little bit better on the base path for somebody with that kind of speed, but that could be a learning thing. That actually could be an area where he gets better. So I guess I haven't answered the question in full. I think this is pretty good. This is pretty good, Garrett Mitchell. I would not ask or expect for more.
Yep, I agree. I think that he definitely is exceeding my expectations. I didn't think he was going to be doing this. I thought when he kind of started to go into a slump after being up, see, it was good initially when he came up. And then he kind of slumped a little bit. And then he apparently went off when I was in Europe. I didn't even realize he was going so well. So the thing is, he's still got the 31.1% strikeout percentage.
Yeah.
And, I mean, guys, y'all thought that Joey Wiemer was a windmill and he was striking out 28% of the time. And, this is worse. So this doesn't seem sustainable. Like this is going to go the other direction. I mean, he's got a 255 batting average and a 360 BABIP because that's what you have to do to carry that kind of batting average when you're striking out that much. I like that he takes the walks. He clearly has good power. Those back-to-back Oppo home runs from him and then Adames last night, jaw-dropping for me. Like, absolutely jaw-dropping. People with that kind of Oppo power, you normally only see that in, like, Jackson Churio, who's, a freak. Those guys hitting the back-to-back Oppo homers, that was extremely impressive. And he does have good raw. Like, Garrett Mitchell's always had good raw. The question has been translating it into games and staying healthy. This is good. He is doing well. how sustainable it is. I see that strikeout percentage, and I don't feel like this is very sustainable long term.
I was looking up Keston's strikeout percentage. I'm like, hey, that sounds like Keston percentage, and then it's a little higher. It's a little higher for Keston. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, it's funny because when Jackson Chourio finally hit his 20th homer, they brought up the 2020 seasons, and Keon Broxton, famously a 2020 season, and famously, me, number one Keon Broxton fan for the whole 2.5 years he was a solid player. But when you talk about Mitchell's profile, I know what we're talking about. He was around that 31-ish% range of strikeouts, but could run into a few and played good center field defense. But it's a question of how long can that last? And then even Keon, got hurt because he was crashing into brick walls at Wrigley Field and fracturing his wrist and never the same after that. So I don't know.
What an elite comp. Love that comp.
Fun. I just love Keon Broxton a ton. Matthew Heggie, another question about Mitchell here, asking if Mitchell stays healthy for the next month, what do you think the trade return could be for him? He might help his K percentage if he didn't watch the first 2 strikes of every at-bat. Also, can you guys use your considerable sway to get the Brewers to nix those dumbass towels for playoff games that reduce the noise level considerably at the games? So, JR, we'll get you to work on that. I was at the Badgers game on Saturday where they handed out red and white pom-poms, but unfortunately by the end, the white ones were just kind of white flags. So Garrett, back to Garrett Mitchell, this is a good point that Matthew brings up because Garrett Mitchell's swing percentage is only 41.9% this year. It's kind of Vogelbackian to me, but Ryan, what do you think?
Yeah, this is passivity as opposed to selectivity. A big part of his walk rate. Now, granted, he does have a pretty decent eye, I think, but he's also just not swinging much, and that is the defining feature of the Milwaukee Brewers offense in the David Stern / Matt Arnold era is not swinging. Just don't swing the bat. It's them, Cleveland, Tampa are all like this. They don't swing the bat much. And so this is just a big part of it. And that's when discipline runs, there's a fine line between discipline and passivity. And Mitchell is on the passivity side of discipline, I think, at this point, to his detriment. So yeah, this is definitely a thing. I don't know what his trade value would be. You hope that Chris Getz with the White Sox really loves him or something and would make a trade for him and overvalue him, because it feels like you're going to have somebody who's really willing to take the risk, though. Maybe, I don't know, the Tampa also likes collecting players with huge injury profiles and question marks like this. He actually does kind of seem to fit as a Tampa player, so maybe Tampa would give you something significant for him. I don't know. This is just a really hard profile because he's been hurt so much. And he's just a weird, the shape of his production when he is healthy is just so damn weird that I don't know what you could do with it.
Bear just shrugs.
I agree with him. I don't know. What could they get for him in a trade? I mean, it just depends what teams would be willing to give up. I think a team would probably be kind of silly to throw in a ton for him. Right. I don't know, maybe a piece of something bigger. I also don't think the Brewers are going to part with him. They love him. They have always loved him. And as much as it's cool to have Blake Perkins be such an elite center fielder, there's not anyone obvious that the Brewers are going to choose to take his place with, especially seeing Chourio kind of thrive in the corner. I think they'd probably be pretty satisfied to just have Mitchell man center. So I don't think the Brewers are going to move him. I think they're pretty happy with him.
Yeah, I would agree.
I mean, he's also already going to be 25, 26 next year. So he's not as young as he used to be. One of the curses of the draft class he was in and the injuries. So that'll eat into his value. Sure.
Yeah, he actually just turned 26. So 9/4 was his birthday. Yeah, 98 baby. So yeah, he's definitely on the old side because he was at UCLA. And then it took him, a little bit to get up here for a first rounder. He wasn't super fast to the majors. So, and then he's just been hurt so much. But he's no longer a rookie at least. That's good.
Yeah. Moving on. Baseball needs more chest lettuce. Asking, can Churio actually win Rookie of the Year, or is it not realistic at this point? Non-baseball related. What's the best music venue in southern Wisconsin? You know, JR, we were talking last week. It's looking like Jackson Merrill or Paul Skeens, but I guess where do you sit on the whole Rookie of the Year pursuit for Jackson Churio?
Hold on 1 second. I'm being attacked by an advertisement on my computer. I mean, I just want to find numbers that can say that Jackson Churio has a chance to finish higher than Jackson Merrill, but they're very similar WAR players, so you could possibly argue, but Merrill still plays center field, and I think that's going to give him a nudge defensively over Jackson Churio. Mm-hmm. And then the numbers overall they're just better for Merrill, like not by a long shot, but you know, we know that Churio struggled in the early going of the season, and that's weighing down what he's capable of. I remember Jackson Merrill is 21 years old. For as much as we fawn over the 20-year-old stuff, he's less than a year, you know, older than Jackson Churio. Churio, you know, Merrill's pretty young too, and playing center field for a contending team, and has, you know, better overall numbers. He was an all-star, better OPS plus, you know, better all the raw stats are in his favor because he's had more time up here. You know, he's 4 stolen bases from being a 2020 player himself at age 21. That's pretty sweet. You know, that's a pretty small list of players who fit that mold. So, and Paul Skeens is a whole separate can of worms because he is the buzziest player that came into the league this year. So, by any metric, I don't think Churio is going to be able to topple those guys. Is it realistic? I mean, maybe he goes on an absolute heater here in the last 2 weeks and gets the recency vote. But I don't think so. I think there's going to be just too much value in that full season for Jackson Merrill, like full season of great elite productivity. That's going to trump what Churio is doing as great as he's been in the second half.
Merrill just has a lot of buzz, and like he's had some big moments that have been, you know, big walk-off type deals and things like that have really gotten people's attention. And by the way, right now, the betting odds on this, Merrill is somewhere between minus 550 and minus 750 in terms of winning Rookie of the Year. Skeens is like between plus 350 and plus 500. Churio's between plus 1,500 and plus 1,600. So if you wanted to go out and throw down some money on Churio, you'd be getting exceptionally good money odds right now for doing that. So it's, I think this is Jackson Merrill's to win. I think the narrative is just really on his side at this point, even though Churio has been better than him, like for the last 4 months. Churio's been the better player, but Merrill just doesn't have that beginning of the season weighing him down.
I guess along those lines, Price Trozen asking on Patreon, Jackson Churio has 4 intentional walks this year compared to only 1 for Jackson Merrill. That should be a pertinent stat for Rookie of the Year, don't you think? Mostly kidding, but
I'm sorry. When Bryce Terang is intentionally walked in front of you, that negates the respectometer that you achieved with your 4 intentional walks. It may have been insane, but that's just the rules. I'm sorry to say.
That's when the little yodeler falls off the cliff and just goes, "Oh,
yeah, that's right."
That's where he goes. We missed baseball needs more chest lettuce. The second half of his question, because I have opinions here.
Yes. Sorry, Ryan. Go ahead with the music venues.
I got to divide it into 2 here: indoor/outdoor. Outdoor, it's Alpine Valley. It's Alpine Valley. Alpine Valley is a very, very special place. It's one of the best places to see a show. Yes, it's can be kind of a pain in the ass to get down there and all of that, but just it's unbelievably gorgeous, and it's a cool place to go and see a show. So Alpine Valley for outdoors. Indoors, I'm just a huge fan. I've been to so many shows there. The Riverside, right down by the river here in downtown Milwaukee. So those would be my 2. Does that make sense? I mean, I'm kind of going with strictly sort of music venues here. The Fiserv was fine, the one show I've seen there, but just fine.
The BMO Harris Pavilion with the view of the lake on Summerfest grounds, that's the one for me. I'm sure I've never been to Alpine, and I'm sure it's elite, a class by itself. I don't even think about it in terms of how it compares to other venues in the city of Milwaukee. But man, the BMO Pavilion, that thing rules. I wish they had figured out the seating situation a little better, but the views cannot top it.
Yeah, yes, good shout on that, because that is also incredible. That it was a real nice addition, and it's the right size because it's, you know, like 4,000 to 6,000 people, I think, ish. And so it's a good size because Alpine is just, it's huge. You can put like 40,000 people in there. So it's just a completely different scale of a place. BMO is really nice, and being right down on the lake, also awesome. So good shout on that.
Next question comes from Devin Bearwolf, who's asking, has there ever been a season where the Brewers had a more productive rookie class than this year's? Not talking about future production, just as rookies. So that qualifier makes it a little tricky, but Ryan, I think you did some stat compiling earlier today. What did you come away with?
Yep, I did a bunch of stat compiling. Well, just taking the things at Fangraphs and doing this. So all this is F4 here. But yes, the 2024 Brewers have the most combined WAR from rookies, 6.4 on the hitting side, which is an all-time high. So this is really being carried by the hitting, but also 3.2 on the pitching as well, for a combined 9.6. And that's just growing with, I'm sure it's bigger after today with Jackson Chourio doing Jackson Chourio things. So that probably will continue to grow. I bet you there's a good chance that gets up over 10 before the end of the year here. So, though, I don't know, does Koenig, how much does he lose for giving up the game today? I don't even know, but whatever, because he's also a rookie. But I was not particularly shocked that 2024 was so high up there. I was a little surprised at what some of the other ones were. We were talking before we started here about 2 through 5, basically, which are all in the post, I guess, Mark Attanasio era of owning the team, starting in 2007. Well, he came in 2005, but 2012 being the second one. That one kind of struck us as strange, and that was an even split. 4 hitting WAR, 4 pitching WAR. So that was a really kind of a strange one that was second. The one we spent a lot of time on and could not figure out for the life of us was 2010. JR, you want to riff about 2010 a little bit here?
Yeah, I thought 2010 was the second. It is, right? On your spreadsheet. It's the second highest.
No,
2010.
2012 is just half a win higher than it.
Oh, that's a lot. That's not what I'm seeing on your spreadsheet that you sent me. You have 20. I don't even see 2012 on the
Are you
board.
on the combined? You need to be on the combined tab.
Oh, I'm just looking at the hitting.
Yep.
I see. Yes, the vaunted 2010 Brewers rookie class, which I'm sure people are just rattling these names off in the back of their head right now as we're talking about this. I mean, the 2010 rookie class, who could forget Jonathan Lucroy, a very good catcher who, granted, really did not 10, but he was on that list. I've already forgotten everyone else who is a rookie on the 2010 Brewers. Oh, Alcides Escobar, good defensive player. Jonathan Lucroy had all the framing stuff going on, so that was a big boost to the 2010 team. Lorenzo Cain, before he became a great for the Royals, he was actually really pretty solid that year. Only 43 games, but 763 OPS, 105 OPS plus. That's solid. That's good. Mike McClendon, Zach Braddock. Couple remember some guys from the bullpen who are rookies. Nobody in the rotation, at least of the main 4 guys, are rookies. Nor would be their 5th guy, Manny Parra, be a rookie. Yeah, I don't get it. I think it just illustrates that rookies seldom contribute on a truly elite level. They just don't. And if they do, it's because there was one outstanding rookie who ruled the way that Jackson Chourio does. So. I mean, this 2024 team is, I mean, Brian Hudson, you forget, is still a rookie. So like that's Tobias Myers is a top, if you look at BBREF, the top 10 players on this team, there's 3 rookies on that list, 4 with Joey Ortiz. So Chourio, Ortiz, Brian Hudson, and Tobias Myers are top 7 players by Baseball Reference WAR. So yeah, this is a really good rookie class, and it heals some of the wounds, I think, from what was kind of a really disappointing rookie class last year. I mean, Garrett Mitchell, we talked about, is contributing for sure, but Sal Frelick, I think everyone hopes there's a little more in there from Sal Frelick. Bryce Terang really fell off a cliff offensively, although obviously, he's still the team leader in Baseball Reference WAR because of his defense. So I don't want to poo-poo that. He's been very good, but Joey Weimer hasn't. He's gone. He's gone. It did not work out with him. So I don't think those guys necessarily had the bang for the buck that you're seeing with these rookies. And far and away the best rookie class the Brewers have ever had.
Yeah, the 2023 class is was fine offensively, or at least, sorry, I shouldn't say offensively. On the position player side, they had 3.8 WAR, which qualifies as towards the top of this list. But negative 0.01 on the pitching WAR side, that really, getting nothing and actually getting negative there really hurts. That puts that class down at the 14th overall. We should give shouts to the 2017 class, because I don't think people really think of the 2017 class as like a big deal, but that was David Stern's first good team. David Stearns and Craig Counsell's first good team. They won 86 games that year. And so they're third on this list with 7 wins, but that's coming from a lot of just rando guys, right? Like that's not, if you look up and down on the 2017 roster, there's not a lot going on there. After that comes 2007, and that is really carried by 2 guys. That's Ryan Braun on the hitting side and Yvonne Gallardo on the pitching side. That's really most of the heavy lifting is being done there. And that might also be Manny Parra's rookie year. And I think he was actually kind of good in that time period. It was in 2008, I think, that things completely fell apart for Manny Parra, never to really come back together. But I think it was that list is basically, it's like Ryan Braun, Yvonne Gallardo, and Manny Parra like carrying that entire load. And that's the 4th best in franchise history. So yeah, this is really good. But going back before that, you have to go to 1992, which probably doesn't surprise people because that had a lot of good rookies on that team.
Listash and all those.
Listash won Rookie of the Year that year, yeah. So
man, I pulled up the 2012 reference page just to kind of see who we were talking about here, and I feel like maybe that rookie class is artificially inflated a bit by Nori Aoki, who was 30, but technically a rookie that year. We had Gene Segura break into the big leagues. He was fine. Martin Maldonado, his official rookie season. Willie Peralta came up for a really good September call-up. Mike Fiers pitched 20 plus starts as a like 27-year-old rookie that year. So, I mean, that was a solid year, but not a lot of, future standouts as we'd expect. But, the question did just to ask for rookie production and not full career production. So decent class there as well.
Yeah. Gene Segura. Did you mention him in there? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But yeah, I think Mike Fiers is doing a lot of the heavy lifting. Man, he had a 9.5 strikeouts per 9 and a 2.5 walks per 9, 3.75 strikeouts a walk. That's my stuff.
He was real good that year.
Yeah, he was real good that year. And that was
picked up the slack after the Greinke trade for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was the year that like they were undone by catastrophically bad bullpen in 2012. Like that was one of the all-time worst bullpens because the starting pitching was, with the exception of Randy Wolf, who finally hit the wall that year. The starting pitching up and down that thing was really, really good. And the bullpen just, I remember in May and June, just kicking away every lead, game after game after game. Axford struggled. K-Rod struggled. Cameron Lowe. Oh God, people hated Cameron Lowe. They were just hemorrhaging runs. Jim Henderson came in and kind of salvaged things to a point, current Brewers bullpen coach. But even then, Tim Dillard got 37 innings for that team out of the pen. So yeah, it really, that bullpen was just a catastrophe. Like one of the worst all time.
All right. Real quick, we got a few more questions to go this week. Bill Rabe asking, please do the research. When else has a batter recorded this line to score a run? Walk, wild pitch, wild pitch, wild pitch. I feel like, Ryan, this is very hard to look up on StatHead or Play Index or whatever you want to say. Were you able to find anything like that?
No, I wasn't. I wasn't able to find anything. This is one.
Super rare.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily like the most rare thing, but yeah, I just getting on base with a walk and then being advanced on 3 wild pitches it probably hasn't happened that many times. But you just imagine what else is going on in that game. Imagine the walks that are being racked up and just all of the craziness. Maybe it would be almost somewhat rare to have it happen because you would think that there'd be a walk in there somewhere that would like force him to advance on a walk as opposed to a wild pitch. So that's sorry, I don't have a better answer for you this on, Bill. I have rookies. That's what I have this week for research. I don't have this. Sorry.
just a crazy sequencing at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
Jack B, our next question, asking, "Hey Ryan, who's more dangerous, Adames with 2 runners on base or Callum Hudson-Odoi with the ball on his right foot? Big win for Forrest Coyr. I don't know what any of that means, but feel free to answer that."
Yeah, the new Liverpool manager picked up his first loss, and it was at home on a Callum Hudson-Odoi. Not quite a wonder strike, but it was pretty close to a wonder strike. They lost their first match. Big win for Forest, huge win for Forest to come into Anfield, where they were talking at the end of the broadcast. They hadn't won since 1969, so that was a big win for Nottingham Forest, and that was a rough one because. Yeah, it was not a good game. That started a bad Saturday, starting that one with that, and then the Badgers getting absolutely destroyed by Alabama especially after the quarterback goes down. Like, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Like that just yeah.
Well, at least you didn't spend $300 on tickets like I did. Adam Post last. It was for 2 tickets. It's fine. It was a good deal by the time I got them. Adam Post, last question this week, asking, "Who do we petition to get Yelly in the broadcaster's booth every game?" JR, that was a fun way to spend a blowout Saturday night. Yelly doing basically like an AMA in the broadcast booth. What do you think?
Yeah, that was perfect television. I loved that. Great game for it. That's a euchre game when you just let the guy tell stories, and to have Yelich up there for, not just like an inning hit. He was there for most of the game. And just really fun to hear him talk. He's a really good talker. He is one of those players who isn't just going to give you a cliche or give you a boring line. He thinks about things a lot. He thinks about the game in a lot of different levels, mechanically, philosophically. I mean, he's just a really bright guy and thoughtful and articulate. And, he's not always going to have the energy to give you the best quote or just, he's not an energy guy necessarily, but he's really just a super interesting dude. And I thought that translated really well on that broadcast. And I love the TV pivot to kind of, just sort of let him cook. I liked how that worked out.
Yeah. See, he strikes me as a guy who tends to not necessarily cliches, but safe answers. He's not usually like, I don't think of him as having this big outgoing personality. I think of like Willy Adames has a big personality, right? And it sounded like, and I was at Stenny's eating wings last night, so I did not actually I didn't get to listen to the broadcast. I just got to watch it. So I was watching it and I was asking people, so is this actually good that they're keeping him up there and just keeping this going? And everybody was like, yeah, he has personality. And like, where did this come from? So I wonder if this is one of those things where like we as outsiders, not people who are in the clubhouse like you are, JR, we don't get to see that side of Yelich. Maybe like you guys do. We get to see like him just giving like a safe, not necessarily cliched, but a safe answer. And it sounds like what he did was anything but that. He was actually engaging and entertaining and showed off his personality in a way that a lot of people were kind of stunned by. So do you get to see more of that when like the cameras aren't rolling and he's not like on the record talking for post games? Because that's mostly what we see.
Yeah, I mean, he's mindful when he's on mic and on camera. He's not going to try to betray anything to, there's obviously limits to what he's going to give you publicly. Mm-hmm. I do think for the most part on the record, he's more than the average player in terms of giving something thought. He doesn't, similar to Craig Counsell, I think, when I talked about him earlier, he doesn't like foolishness. He doesn't like dumb, lame questions. You can almost see it when it's, how does it feel out there to win a game? Not that someone would ask it quite like that, but he just doesn't want to deal with that per se. But, if you ask him about the philosophy of hitting and things like that, he's into it. I have a lot of respect for him. I think he's a really smart guy, and I've really enjoyed having the privilege to cover this team with him around it, and obviously the success has been there too, and that makes him all the more interesting. But I thought it was cool. I loved that he took to that venue really nicely.
And I got to admit, I had the thought of, because guys often when they're wrapping up their playing career will kind of go do some broadcast stuff. They'll pop in, especially like starting pitchers. Wainwright was doing this a bunch, I guess, with the Cardinals, and even on national broadcast, he was popping in and doing stuff. And now he's actually a national broadcaster. that thought kind of ran through my head. I'm like, oh, is he starting to think of post-career playing days? Because earlier that day,
I mean, I don't want to interrupt, but I don't think that's what he's doing at all. He definitely plans on playing for a long time still. Yeah. And I don't know if I get the sense that he's like, he would be good at that necessarily, or that he even desires that. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what's in anybody's head, but that is not how I interpreted it. Just myself.
Okay, that's fair. That's kind of what I was wondering, is just like, is this a thing he would want to do post-playing career? I would have said going into last night, like, no, why? There was no indication in my mind that that was something he would like to do or be, like all that great at or whatever. But apparently he was quite good in the booth. So the question naturally arose. But they did say earlier in the day that he was saying that he feels like he's going to be ready for spring training, that basically he's going to be able to have a pretty normal winter in terms of getting ready. He's not going to have to alter much in terms of his normal winter preparation to get ready for spring training. So that's a good positive to take from that. But it made me wonder a little bit.
No,
hey guys, I'm sorry. I got to get going. So I just wanted to thank you again for having me on, and enjoy the time. Sorry to bail just a little bit before the end here, but hopefully check out Microbrew, and we'll talk again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, JR, for joining us. Listen to Microbrew. Look for JR, JS Online. Anything else you want to plug real quick before you go?
Yeah, JS Online will do it. Anything we got there. Obviously, we're still on the Badgers, even though they took quite the whooping on Saturday, and Packers got a win on Sunday. So I guess there's that if you're into that sort of thing. And we're still humming along. This is still a great time of year. October baseball is right around the corner. Hopefully I'll get there for a clinch, get some video this week. So lots still to come.
Awesome. Thanks again, JR, for joining us. Ryan.
See you guys.
Thank you. Ryan, new patrons. Anyone join up for us this week?
Fam Grand Slam fan.
Woo.
Welcome.
Say that 5 times fast.
Yeah, no, that wouldn't happen. That would definitely turn into bad words, I'm sure. So yeah, Fam Grand Slam fan. Welcome. We appreciate it. Thank you very much for joining up.
Absolutely. A reminder, patreon.com/MKE tailgate. $2 a month is all it takes to get question priority, both on this podcast and on reporting as eligible. $5 a month. You get those extra podcasts every month as well. That'll do it for this week. As we mentioned, big series against the Phillies coming up in this homestand, and then another rebound series against the Diamondbacks. So we'll recap how the Brewers do in those big series, see how they're looking in the race for the second seed in the NL, that first round bye, all that crucial good stuff that we talked about earlier. We'll recap all of that and anything else that happens, questionable Pat Murphy decisions or not, next time here on Milwaukee's Tailgate.